Hey friends, it's Gary Carpenter with the Realtor Roadmap Agent Spotlight. Today's episode is one that hits close to home for me. I've had the pleasure of knowing Corky Grimes for over 28 years. In fact, he was the third person I ever met at the company where I chose to hang my real estate license. And from that moment on, he became a mentor, a guide, and a lifelong friend. Corky has faced adversity that most of us can't even imagine. 5 battles with cancer, 3 of them stage 4. And yet, through every diagnosis, every moment of fear, and every season of uncertainty, something powerful happened. His life became crystal clear. What mattered, what didn't, who he wanted to be, and how he wanted to love the people around him. This conversation is raw, honest, and deeply inspiring. It's a reminder to every one of us, agents, parents, spouses, and leaders, that life is fragile, time is precious, and the people we love matter more than anything else. I promise you, this interview will change something inside you. Let's jump in. So 4 decades in real estate, what do you believe has been the biggest key to your longevity success in this business?
I think probably from the very beginning, I had a mentor who hired me and invested time in me. And one of the biggest principles that he articulated to me was, this is a business. Most people that we know in real estate have come from another job. And I think for a lot of them, it's hard to break that. You work 8 to 5, whatever the hours are, you get paid whatever the hours are, and so on. And real estate, of course, is the antithesis of that. And so from day one, almost day one, certainly early on, I treated it like a business. I understood I was the president, the CFO, and so I gauged my actions accordingly.
When you got into real estate, did you jump in full time, or did you need an income prior to and then kind of move your way into the business?
Well, we certainly needed our income. Both, even my wife Eve and I were working. We both contributed to the bottom line. But I did go in straight in. I went in 100%. As they said of Cortez when they were invading the Mexicans, I burnt the boat. And so I really had no choice but to have some success.
And did you, when you, within your first couple years, I've always been told that typically in this business that you usually, there's 80% of real estate agents end up failing out of this business. Not by choice, but because they didn't instill the right habits, they weren't doing production, whatever it is. But when did you start to see success? Did you see it right away when you got into the business, your first year, second year?
I did. My first year, and it wasn't a complete year, I got my license and started in February of '86, and I did 22 deals that year. And my average sale price was, wait for it, $68,000.
Is that for the whole house?
Yeah. Everything included. I was the benefactor. Shortly after I got in the business, rates fell. They were coming down from an all-time high, but they fell overnight to about 8.5. And so the market went bonkers. And during that period of time, the only way you could communicate with an agent was by telephone. And we had what was called duty time. And I volunteered for that day and night, that and open houses. And that was really my initial success. I got early on very good at getting people's information over the phone or face-to-face and converting them into clients.
And so when you, back then, looking at 2 different scenarios. Obviously, you have slowed down, and I want to get into, obviously you're kind of in that retirement phase, what we all call retirement phase. But what was it like? What if you looked and said, all right, so brand new real estate agent, in the business, working it full time. I always say, you're either working on your business or you're working in your business. And so working on your business is like, what did a typical day look like for you when it came to working on your business?
Well, if you were working, you were in the office, unless you're on appointments, of course, because all of our resources were in the office. The phone calls came to the office, and so on. So a typical day for me was I was typically in the office sometime between 7:30 and 8 in the morning. And I started prospecting, which again, the definition of prospecting then was you were on a telephone and you were calling people. And then, as I said, I filled in throughout the day if there was open time on the duty desk doing that. And then, man, probably for 3 or 4 years straight, with the exception of a few Sundays, every Sunday I was in an open house, at least one, sometimes two.
Did you kind of buy into, since really all you had back then to communicate or to reach out to people, whether you were door knocking, right, or
Which I did.
doing, cold calling? Did you participate in that at all, or did you mainly who? I guess my question would be, who did you actually make phone calls to?
My sphere, people that I knew. It's really interesting. What I found was the first year that group was very standoffish. And then again, during this period of time, this is when for production, you were featured in the newspaper under this big ad that your company put out. And my picture started appearing in there and appearing in there. And all of a sudden, that group that had been standoffish started to help me. They, I guess, realized I was able to do it. And we also we educated our kids privately, and even I got very involved in their school. And I didn't get involved in the school with the intent of necessarily getting business, but during the building phase of my career, that was huge. A lot of my business came from the parents that I got to know.
And so, what specific activities were you involved in?
Well, I really, again, it was a small school, so it's easy to do this, but we served on about every committee. Eva chaired their big festival, which was their number one fundraiser. I was on finance committee. Over time, I'd been on a couple other committees, and that was it.
And did you do any coaching or anything?
I did. Great. I'm glad you asked me. I coached for about 12 years, volunteered.
Okay. Soccer?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like you were engaging in activities that number one you enjoyed, but then at the same time you were able to. Were you puking on people about real estate, like I'm in real
No,
estate, or
no, no. You know, people, and I would say this to somebody coming in, real estate is not a job, it's a lifestyle. You're always doing it. And again, it's not, by that I mean, you're not always in somebody's face about it, but you've got to be on 24/7. It's just again, it's a lifestyle. You know, we don't come home at night. I can remember coming home, having dinner with even the kids. The kids would settle down. I had this room upstairs. I'd go up and get back on the phone and make. Usually, those calls were usually people I'd met at opens that I was following up with. You know, trying to groom them.
so obviously you open houses, floor time, and then calling your sphere of influence were the three major activities that you were doing?
Yes, at that point, yes.
Okay. But not only then the networking came in with working with the school, but at the same time, you were able to do two things. You were able to not only get the word out, potentially them seeing you in the newspaper or whatever the case may be, but building that face-to-face relationship, but then also spending time with your kids and their activities and staying on top of that as a parent and those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things. There was an annual food raiser for the homeless. You might remember Roger Lebert. He and I walked the neighborhood and flyered it. Then we walked the neighborhood a few days later and collected canned goods. 4th of July, smattered the neighborhood with American flags. There were little flags that we ordered, and we had our card put on it that said our name and the company. And so it was really a host of things. I always said, in my mind, there was marketing and there was advertising. I think that's a little bit more advertising, which reinforces the other things that you do.
So
Again,
did you do any farming or anything? Geographical farming
I
of
did. I
subdivisions
did.
and
I
stuff like
farmed the
that?
neighborhood that I lived in. Absolutely. Yeah.
And would you encourage anybody to do that? And what kind of success did you have that there? And what did you when you had to market in there? What specifically did you do to market a subdivision?
Well, again, I lived in an old part of town that really wasn't a defined subdivision, but again, we did things like pumpkins, dropped off pumpkins for people on Thanksgiving. We did the 4th of July flags. We did the food drive where we went around, and that was in essence door knocking, right? I mean, we were
Hmm.
knock, knock, knock. Did you get my flyer? Do you have any cans of food you'd like to donate? Again, this was during a period of mailings was your other option. And so we committed to a program of doing just listed, just sold, you might be interested in mailers. And so there wasn't much time that went by that you didn't receive something from me during that period.
But you know what's funny? As you talk about all of these things that you did in the late 80s, going into the early 90s, nothing's changed. All of those things are, if you do them consistently over time, are still successful today in 2025 with email and mobile phones and all the other tools that are supposed to make us successful. It still goes back to those, what we like to call basics, right?
Right. And the underlying word is consistency. Find what works for you and then do it over and over. And that's really what I did. I was lucky that early on, although I think the definition of luck is when opportunity meets preparation. But anyway, then I eventually started adding buckets. So I was fishing out of maybe 3, 4, 5 buckets with the attitude. I never was completely sure where the next lead was going to come from, but I knew it was going to come out of one of those buckets. And so again, this was all part of the business building phase.
Okay, so now going in, we're now 5 or 10 years into your business. What did a typical day look? What did your days change as far as your mornings, your prospecting, any of that type of stuff? Obviously, when you get a listing and you go on appointment, you go on appointment. You get a buyer, you have a buyer. But you had obviously by the time you were 10 years in, you had 4 kids,
Right.
little kids, all
Yep.
active. So you had a family life. You're obviously involved in your church, involved in your kids' schools. So how did you balance, maintaining your business and not just maintaining, but also having it grow, and then keeping that balance in your family life?
Well, addressing the balance, a man much smarter than me, which typifies a lot of people, right? But anyway, said the best advice he gave me was, I'm sorry, I have a commitment. And looking back, I missed very few of my kids' events. I was one of the few dads on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock that was at the Christmas play because that was a commitment. So it was on my calendar. So if you were to call me and say, Gary, I'm really sorry, I've got a previous commitment. Could you do it this afternoon? Could we do it tomorrow? And so that's really where the balance came in. Now, having said that, I also was early on spending a lot of Sunday afternoons away from them, right? Because I was doing the opens, but the family understood that. They catch on pretty quickly how the system works. Dad sells a house and they get to eat and things like that, get toys and whatnot. So everybody was, pretty much on board. But the evolution, really up until I would say COVID in 2000 was I was always an office person. I've always been a morning person. I got in early. And so I'm just generalizing here. I would get in, get my cup of coffee, sit down, organize my notes, look at my schedule for the day, and put together a list of things I needed to accomplish, follow up phone calls, and so on. Then I really dove into that in the first hour or so of the morning. So an ideal day for me was I was in the office busy during the morning, and I was out of the office in the afternoon on appointments, face to
Okay.
face, belly to belly, as we like to say.
And so now that at the probably the end of your career in real estate, Cole, what has been a typical day for you now here in the last couple years?
Well, so I'm a lead of a team, small team. There's three of us, and so I have a lot of responsibility to them. So, big part of what I do now is educating myself. What are we seeing in the market? What are the trends in the market? What are the changes? Trying to keep on the forefront of that to help make them the best that they can be. But still, so an ideal day for me right now is. If it's the summertime, I'm up anytime after 4:30. If it's the winter time, and we're in late fall now, I'm up maybe 6ish, and I get up, get my hot tea, sit in my chair, and usually it's me by myself. It's quiet. I cherish this time. I read for maybe a half an hour. I always have a book that I'm reading. And then I morph from that into meditate for 20 to 30 minutes. And then that, again, kind of evolves into, at that point, picking up my phone, checking messages. And then I do listen or watch a lot of reels. Some of it's just for entertainment, but some of it is for nuts and bolts. What are the pros saying? What's happening in the market, and that type of thing.
You said you read.
Right.
So what would you say is your the three books that everybody should have in their library?
Well, it's a combination. I try not to do too much of either, but most of what I do is frankly is reading for entertainment. Lewis and Clark, how the western part of the United States was developed, and Abraham Lincoln, and those things really intrigued me. Because when I was taking history as a young man, I told myself it was boring, and now I wished I hadn't told myself that. But back to books. I said the world's greatest salesman, Og Mandino, and I said Think and Grow Rich. I'm drawing a blank, Gary, on the third one.
Mine would be the Bible. I'm sure that you probably are meditating on that thing every day. So, how do you stay consistent when business slows down or when life throws you unexpected challenges?
Well, I think again the word's consistency, because if you develop systems that work for you, they're going to work for you in any market. We used to say 20% of the agents do 80% of the business. I think it's now 10% do 90% of the business. And so I think it's incumbent on you. You got to be the neighborhood expert. We say real estate is local. Well, really, it's very local. And I could name neighborhoods. There'll be people listening to this video. The neighborhoods won't mean anything to you, but you know them. We have neighborhoods in Omaha that 2 blocks to the west or 2 blocks to the east, even within the same neighborhood, that's a different constellation of numbers. And so you have to be a resource for people. You have to be the go-to person that they consider, that you have a group of contractors that you can recommend. These are things, you become a part of people's lives. And so when they think real estate, they think of you, because you have these contractors that you can recommend. You're up to date on the market. You know what's happening in the market, and you know specifically what's happening in their neighborhood. And I think this is really what people are looking for.
So are you saying that you probably spend, a certain portion, your day, your week, bringing in new business through lead gen, through networking, all that type of stuff, but then there's also a certain part of your day and week that gets dedicated to servicing your past clients, your database, not from helping them move or helping their friends and family move, but helping them with their actual home or something, maybe I need a good restaurant, maybe I need a good this or whatever.
Yeah, so for your listeners, my daughter got her real estate license 10 years ago, and we've partnered up. The shift has been so much more of that has gone to her and away from me. But if you'd asked me this question 5 years ago, 100% that would have been my answer.
All right. So real estate can easily take over one's life. How have you learned to balance business, family, faith, and personal time over the years?
Well, again, one of the greatest pieces of advice that I received was I have a commitment. And sometimes you can't make those commitments. The house came on the market. Your people have been looking for a year. Then you have to go and do that. And I think there's periods of time where there isn't much balance, right? I mean, we have to be honest about it. If you're committing to helping people buy and sell real estate, and you're during that period of time, then that's what you got to be doing, is buying and selling real estate. So we always took at least one family vacation a year, sometimes a couple. But again, I made most of my kids' school events. I coached their soccer teams, things like that.
All right. So shifting gears a little bit, obviously everybody goes through some challenges in their careers, in their lives, whether it's personal, whether it's with somebody that's in the family, whether it's a friend or whatever the case may be. What are some of the health challenges that you've had on your journey? And also, how have those experiences of going through your health challenges shaped your mindset, gratitude, and daily focus?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for those that don't know me, I've had cancer 5 times. I've been stage 4 3 times. I'm currently cancer-free. I just became cancer-free May of this year. One of my favorite stories was, it was March of 2007, and the doctor comes in the room, and I, as a friend of mine likes to say, there I was minding my own business, and he said, you're stage 4, and I give you a 40% chance of making it. And one of the, everything happens for a reason, and there's a positive to everything. And hear me out. I was scared to death. I thought I was going to die. So I didn't walk out of the room saying, gee, I can see something positive in this. I couldn't. But one of the things, the gifts that it gave me was, as he was saying those words, my life crystallized. Everything that was important was in front of me, and all the other stuff just didn't matter. And that was my wife. What was she going to do without me? My daughter was getting married. I had a son graduating. How are all of these things going to transpire with me not being there? Which told me all the rest of this is just doesn't really matter that much. I mean, obviously we got to pay our bills, but these are the things that are the most important in life. The interesting thing is, so I had a market analysis already scheduled for that evening. So I went to it because it was therapeutic for me. It got my mind off of what was happening. And in the market analysis, he said, well, I want to try for more. And right, I don't care, right? This is the least of my concerns, whether I get this listing or not. And I just said, no. And there's this long pause. And he looks at me and he goes, okay. And we signed up and went on. But if he'd have said, well, I'm going to list with somebody else, I would have said, okay. Because it just wasn't that important. So I threw myself into real estate during that period of time while I was going through treatment. I went through a 6-week treatment program. And here's what I'm leading up to. One of the great punchlines to the story was, I was selling real estate right and left. I'm going in on Mondays for chemo. I'm doing radiation 5 days a week. I'm sick. I'm losing weight. And I'm selling real estate. And it got to the point where I couldn't leave the house. And Eva, who's never sold a stick of real estate in her life, closed for me. She got her license, closed for me, the biggest sales month I ever had. And at the time this is going back to 2007, $60,000 of closings in 1 month. So it's a great story because it's great about her. She stepped up and did what she had to do to get them closed.
Very nice. Very nice. How has it really affected your mindset? Obviously, gratitude, and then just daily focus from what before you had cancer to where you're kind of, obviously you didn't care when you went on that CMA, but where has it kind of led you to today?
Well, I've developed my 4 truisms. I don't know if you want to hear them, but
yes, I do.
Okay, we're all born, correct? We're sitting here. Everybody pays taxes at some point. We are all products of the decisions that we've made, not the market, not our moms, not our wives, not our brothers, not our sisters. It's us. We are a product of decisions that we've made. And number four is, hang on, we're all going to die. And one of the beautiful things, if you will, for lack of a better word, in several instances now, I've been given a potential deadline, is it gives me advantage of really appreciating how great it is. I love living on this planet. I love being around the people that I'm around. I love doing the stuff that I do. I'm just a very, very blessed guy.
That you are. All right, so shifting gears a little bit. Many agents, probably 95% of them, struggle with burnout, or we could probably say 100%, or some type of discouragement. What do you do to stay motivated to keep your why strong, especially in tough seasons?
Yeah, I think some of them that suffer from burnout, let's be honest, weren't burning to begin with, right? Well, I mean, I think that's true. What we do is hard. People on the outside don't get it. And we've all been through this. The people that bought from somebody else, the house that didn't sell and it expired, and all of those things. And it just, unfortunately, is part of the business. I have developed a long time ago a good habit of compartmentalizing, and again, just a quick war story. Been working with these people. They called me. I'm sitting with Eva, and they said, we want you to know we bought a FISBO. And I said, that's great. I'm paraphrasing. If there's anything I can do, let me know. I hung up the phone, and she said, she said, I can't believe, how do you do that? I said, well, there's two choices, Eva. I could burn the bridge, trash it, and say all kinds of things, or do what I did. Well, fast forward, about 3 years later, they decided to sell that house, called me, I sold them their new house. And I don't want to get too Pollyanny, but you have two choices in anything in life, whether you've gotten cancer or you've lost a deal, is nothing's going to change that. So here's your options. You can dwell on the negative, or you can look to the positive and move on. And that's a choice I made a long time ago, is that I'm going to look to the positive and move on. Because again, the worst thing I can do is keep going down that rabbit hole, and it's just going to consume me.
So what role has faith played in guiding your decisions, sustaining your business, and helping you serve your clients at a higher level?
My faith is everything to me. By the grace of God go I. I mean, there's a reason I'm still on this planet, and I think that He has a lot to do with it. And so a big part of that then is, I've taken these huge deductions from the universe. I think it's incumbent on me, before I pass, to make some huge deposits back. And part of that is, again, contributing to people, contributing to their lives. Back to the morning routine. One of the things I challenge myself with every day is, who needs me today? And it doesn't mean they're necessarily in a crisis. I've sent you videos. I send other people videos. It's just one of the things that I try to incorporate is, how can I be of help to somebody else?
That leads me into my next question. Final question is, what legacy do you hope to leave in your business, your family, and your community as you look back over your career?
Well, one at a time. The legacy that I hope to leave in the business is that the people that I helped buy and sell real estate. So again, the mindset is, we don't sell anybody anything. I'm not so gifted as I could convince you to buy something you don't want. Frankly, I never felt like I had the time or energy to do it. So I simply sought out people who were motivated to buy, or motivated and or sell, and help them accomplish their goals. That's real estate. It's really, truly that simple. So as far as my legacy in real estate goes, I would hope that people would say he was an honest broker, he was a man of his word. If he said he would do it, he did it. My family is the most important thing to me above all. So I hope some people say he was a good husband, he was a good father, he was a good grandpa, and he's a good friend. I would say much the same. Much has been given, much is expected. And I won't go through it, but I volunteer in the community. And so I try to give back. And because again, Omaha's been so good to me, so good to my family. Raised a family, the kids are on the road now. And so it's incumbent for somebody like me to give back.
Okay. All right. Well, that was good. That was really good. You have any closing thoughts or anything that you want to add in?
Back to this is what I say to people. I've been asked to speak a couple times. This was cancer oriented, so people who have had cancer or dealing with it and so on is that I go to funerals, and this is just broad advice for everybody. I challenged you this one time is can you name your great grandparents' full names? Most people can't. I can't. I mean, I can give you their general names, but that's it. What's the point? 3 generations removed. We're a figment of somebody's imagination. That's really it. Unless our last name's Zuckerberg or Jobs, we're not going to be remembered. And so the here and now is where we're at. And the most important things in our lives are our relationships with our families and with our friends, period. The rest of it just doesn't matter. And my last thought is, you go to a visitation or a funeral, 1 or 2 people get up and they regale this guy or woman. They go on for 10 minutes, what a great person they was. And I'm always thinking that I hope to hell they told that person that while they were alive. So if you've got somebody, and you do, we all do, tell them what you think, because they could step outside, be hit by a car, and it's game over. So I know if that happened to me, we get done here, I step outside, car runs over me. Everybody in my life that's close to me knows exactly how I feel about them, because I've told them.
This is true. Well, good. All right. Well, I think that's it. That's all we got. That was really good. Corky's story is one I hope stays with you long after this video ends. His courage, his honesty, and the clarity he gained through facing unbelievable adversity remind all of us that life is fragile, time is precious, and the people we love matter more than anything. And I want to share something with you that Corky said to me off camera. He told me everyone close to you should know exactly how you feel about them. That really hit me. And with that said, I want to take a moment to speak directly to Corky. Corky, you and your wife Eva and your entire family have been an inspiration to Linda and me for years. And you have 3 boys and 1 girl, and we do too. And there's always been this natural connection that we've had. We had the pleasure of being at your birthday party recently, and Linda and I ended up staying later than anyone who wasn't a Grimes. And honestly, it was one of the most beautiful things to witness. Watching your kids laugh together, share stories, love on each other, and seeing all the grandkids having an absolute blast, especially once the karaoke machine made its way out. It reminded us of what real success looks like. A family that loves deeply, supports fiercely, and finds joy in simply being together. Thank you for sharing your story, your heart, and your life with all of us. If Corky's message spoke to you today, take a moment to reach out to someone you love. Tell them how you feel, be present, be grateful, and don't wait.